Bungie has dropped a bombshell of a live stream in this week's developer stream for Into the Light. With it, we got the news of many returning fan favorite weapons coming on April 9th, along with one of the most requested things players have asked for years in the Super Black shader. Along with that, joining Super Black is basically an Avengers lineup of returning weapons, including, but not limited to, the Mountaintop, the Recluse, Fallen Guillotine, Blast Furnace, Hammerhead, Midnight Coup, Luna's Howl, Edge Transit, because why not, and lastly, LC's Rifle, which is, you know, getting a rework from the Stranger's Rifle from Destiny 1, so that's alright. And there's going to be more weapons, of course. It's not the entire lineup, just to be clear. There's also a few current-gen weapons being brought in and reimagined, some of those being Succession from Deepstone Crypt and Forbearance from Valve the Disciple. Yes, those raid weapons. Also, there's Hung Jury that we saw last week, but who cares about Hung Jury at this point, honestly? This is like the 18th reimagining of it, you know? Bungie also stated that these weapons can roll with double perk columns on them, or at least a chance to, and will be enhanceable once Final Shape launches in June, so keep that in mind when farming out these weapons. Also, stated there will be a limited edition variant of these weapons in terms of ornament, or at least that's the idea I get from their discussions of the weapons. Now, with all that said, let's talk about some of the perks that were mentioned or shown off during the livestream. Also, it's worth noting that Bungie plans to release an article showing off the random rolls for all these weapons, but for the time being, let's mention what we've seen so far. First, the origin trait. Indomitability, I think that's how you say it. If I'm wrong, just pretend that I said it right, alright? This perk, upon defeating an enemy, allows you to gain grenade energy if you're on a light subclass, or melee energy if you're on a dark subclass. Pretty good for an origin trait, if you ask me. On to the weapons. Mountaintop returns in its classic form, but with a bit of a twist. Along with having multiple perks in the columns that you can roll, you can now also rocket jump with Mountaintop, similar to how Danger Zone works for rocket launchers currently in the game, which I gotta say, looks pretty fun to mess with. We currently don't know a whole lot about its perks, but we do know that at the very least, it can roll Autoloading, Impulse Amplifier, Vorpal, and Frenzy. Recluse also makes its return as the duo Reign of Terror alongside Mountaintop. Recluse does come back with its Master of Arms perk, however, it was mentioned that the perk is not as strong as its original release, due to just how broken it would be, and maybe fair point to that. But given that Recluse is a Void SMG, plus the origin trait that we mentioned, I imagine it won't be very hard to slot Recluse in for some meta builds, especially if we get a Void Season coming up in Final Shape. Then we got things like Hammerhead, which can roll Rampage and Killing Tally at the same time. Fallen Guillotine makes its return as well, with Eager Edge and Chain Reaction among other things. Edge Transit comes back with Cascade Point in the third column. That should be interesting, especially if there's a damage perk to go along with it in the fourth column. Blast Furnace is also back from Black Armory and was shown off with Headseeker plus a brand new perk currently called Final Stand, but will be renamed to something different when it's released later on in Final Shape. The perk is very Golden Tricorn-esque, but specifically states that its damage buff can be stacked, and that might be pretty nutty once we know what other weapons can potentially roll it outside of primaries. Luna's Howl is also back and retains its Magnificent Howl perk, although it's not the exact same perk that it used to be. It was compared similarly to what Hawkmoon was/is, and that has the potential to 2-tap if built correctly, which I imagine PvP players would love to hear that, given it's a popular hand cannon from the past. Then, speaking of hand cannons, we have Midnight Coup, another hand cannon returning, and we've already seen two great perks on that weapon, those being Explosive Payload and Kinetic Tremors, and it'll probably be one of the most wanted weapons out of these, at least I imagine it will be. So that's most of the bigger info that we got from this live stream, which was honestly a lot more than I had anticipated going into this. While that's the bulk of the weapon info that we got, we also got some other news coming out of this live stream that I think a lot of people will enjoy. The first thing mentioned was that Bungie is increasing the vault space in Final Shape by 100, so it's going to be bringing up the total to 700, which Hoarders Anonymous will probably love that addition to the game. And lastly, Bungie teased that next week there'll be some surprises, including talking about some exotic mission information and craftable weapons in them. And I know I'm stating the obvious here, but surely this is a reference to them talking about Whisper of the Worm and that exotic mission coming back, and potentially maybe even Zero Hour, although I'm a bit skeptical on Zero Hour just because, you know, Outbreak Prime is already a weapon in the game. But with that said, how are you guys feeling? Excited? Underwhelmed? Maybe you're going to see how things play out before judging it and seeing how Onslaught works? Let me know in the comments below. So what are my thoughts on all of this? Honestly, I think it's fine from a perspective of this is a free update, and they're just giving people what they want from the past that people just nostalgia clambered over. Totally fine, as long as everything actually has some new perks brought up to, you know, new standards as opposed to just the past, because most of the things in the past are kind of garbo by now, you know what I mean? If that makes sense. But in terms of what I expect, or what I hope for at least, aside from what we know already, the weapons are cool. Onslaught seems cool, but we haven't actually played the, the late game portion of it, the 50th round or whatever and all that. Who knows what that looks like? So I'll reserve judgment on that. But the main thing I think that I want to see, or at least hinted at, going into the future at some point, is finally talking about Wrath of the Machine. It's been, I don't even know, it's like Voldemort, you know? Bungie has just not mentioned Wrath whatsoever, and all you ever see about this is just speculation. Oh, they can't bring it back because it's SIVA and SIVA splicers, and they don't have those models in D2, and blah, 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 where none of us are devs, and we actually know how that could work or could not work, how long that would take to do. But clearly, they must know that a majority of the player base, if not just everybody straight up, want Wrath of the Machine back in the game, especially, reimagined in 60 FPS and PC gaming and all that. Like, it's just a guaranteed slam dunk, aside from what they've already brought back, which I imagine will already be a universal slam dunk with, like, Mountaintop and Recluse and all that. But one of the most loved raids in Destiny history coming back, that just hits different on a whole new level, I think. And you know what, in that same vein, I hope the exact same thing happens with Whisper and Zero Hour. They're brought back up to standard, difficulty-wise. If you want to throw in Tormentors there or Lucienheim or whatever, that's cool with me. Just don't let it be literally copy and paste in terms of enemies density from back in the day, because let's be honest, just putting in like a couple of Taken Boomers and some Centurions in there into the Whisper mission isn't going to be that challenging, because of a current sandbox is insanely broken. So I do think it needs to be notched up in difficulty, but keep the aura and the mystery of them alive, and keep those the same way. I do wonder if they're going to make Whisper craftable, because it's the Whisper mission, and also if Zero Hour does come back with it, I wonder what the new exotic is going to be. Please shut up, iPhone. Thank you. We're just going to keep that in there, all right? But yeah, hopefully those are brought up to snuff. Hopefully they at least acknowledge Wrath in some capacity as one of the surprises. Oh, and last thing with the whole exotic mission, rotator, crafted weapons, blah, blah, blah stuff. Bungie, can we please get the drop rates on those massively increased? Because currently, the exotic missions dropping red borders is kind of ridiculous. You get 1 on normal and 2 on legend per week, and then it's just an RNG fest of running a 20-minute mission back, and then getting 1 singular drop, and then hoping it's the weapon that you want, and not weapons you already have crafted, and then hoping that that weapon is a red border. Oh, also, you can get armors to be your drop from there as well. So please update those at the very least on Legend to have like multiple drops or a high chance of a red border, so it's not a complete waste of time for new players. You know what I mean? Otherwise, it'll take like a year for them to get it, and I don't think a new player is gonna do the same missions for a year straight for some old red borders. Just my thought. In the meantime, if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing today and maybe leave a like along with that comment. It's much appreciated and does help the channel grow, and if you don't know what to leave as a comment, simply leave "into the light" as the comment. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.